Paul makes it clear that one of the basic structures of biblical history, that is to say human history, is the contrast and the similarity between the first Adam and the last Adam. The first Adam brings sin into the world, and because he brings sin into the world, he brings death. By one sin, he brings sin and death into the world, Paul says in Romans 5. The last Adam, Jesus Christ, by one act of righteousness, which I think Paul means, by which Paul means the cross, by that one act of righteousness, Jesus reverses things. And instead of a world of sin and death, he brings a world in which those who have received grace and life in Jesus Christ reign. Instead of death reigning, we reign in life. Life reigns through us because Jesus is reigning. But the whole structure is the first Adam and the last Adam. And Paul does something similar in 1 Corinthians 15 when he's talking about the resurrection of the dead. The first Adam is made a soulish being, a psychike being. But the last Adam is a spiritual man, a heavenly man. There's the first earthly man, there's the last heavenly man. But the whole of human history is played out in that structure between the first and the last Adam. That's an important structure for reading the entire Bible. But it's important that we get it right, and there are a couple of different ways that we can get that structure wrong. We can get it wrong if we think that Adam was created to remain in a kind of steady state, that Adam was going to remain in the garden, he was going to remain where he was and in the state that he was forever. But the scriptures teach us that Adam was created to be glorified. He was created to glorify the creation around him. And so from the beginning, the aim was for Adam to grow up and to mature and to be glorified, to become something like a glorified Adam, something like the last Adam. So we need to read the Bible as that process of glorification. And we see that going on through the stages of the Bible. It's not just that we have the first Adam who failed to achieve glory and the last Adam, Jesus, who does achieve glory. But along the way, we see a whole series of Adams that elevate humanity. Noah is a new Adam figure. He's the father of a new human race. He's in a world that's been purified by the flood. He brings all kinds of new animals. He's given the commission to rule over the world as Adam was. But he's an elevated Adam. Instead of dwelling and being placed in a garden that God planted, he plants his own vineyard. He plants the vineyard. He does a godlike thing when he plants the vineyard. Instead of being restricted to plant food, he's given permission to eat the animals. He's not just a priest in the Garden of Eden, but Noah is elevated to execute punishments and to be a judge. Noah becomes a king. He's another Adam, but he's an elevated Adam. And if you go through the Old Testament, you see that process is going on all the way through the Old Testament. We don't simply leap from Adam to the last Adam, but all the way through we're seeing the process of the glorification of humanity from Adam to Noah to Abraham to Moses to David to Solomon and so on until we get to Jesus, who brings all of those to culmination. So the first thing we need to recognize is that Adam was created to be glorified, and that process of glorification goes on in spite of sin. The other thing that we need to keep in mind is what's implicit in what I just said, and that is that there is not just one Adam, but there are many Adams. That's why we should say that Jesus is not the second Adam, but rather he's the last Adam. He's the eschatos Adam. He's the Adam of the eschaton. He's humanity fulfilled now in the resurrection, living a spiritual life. And when we recognize that there are a series of Adams, then we begin to see not only does each Adam foreshadow Jesus, but each Adam is also in some way an antitype. It's been foreshadowed by the previous Adams. So Noah is foreshadowed by the first Adam, and Noah foreshadows Jesus. Moses has been foreshadowed by Noah, who is a previous Adam, and also by the first Adam. And Moses also foreshadows the coming of Jesus. What we get throughout the Bible is a thick portrait of Adam. Irenaeus, the church father, talks about the fragments of the Old Testament being like pieces of a mosaic that are being put together over time until it reveals in Jesus Christ the face of a beautiful king. Those fragments are a series of Adam figures throughout the Old Testament. And it's only when we put all those together and see their complex interrelationship, when we see the richness of the portrait of Adam in the Old Testament, that we begin to see the fullness of Jesus Christ, the last Adam.